Hello YouTubers, this is Cessnaace, and I thought what I would do is a comparison video between the Western version of the Sega Master System and the Japanese version. But before I get into that, a little relevant history. The first console that Sega released was the SG, or Sega Game 1000, released in Japan on July 15th, 1983. It listed for 15,000 yen, which is about $241, something like that. Now, as fate would have it, Nintendo released the Famicom on exactly the same day. Now, the Famicom listed for a little less, 14,800 yen, and it was a little more powerful. However, Sega continued to improve on its technology. After the SG-1000, they came out with a computer system, a learning computer, called the SC-3000. Now, the SC-3000, in addition to floppy disks and a tape drive, would play games that were on cartridges. Those cartridges would also play in the SG-1000. Now, after that, Sega came out with the SG-1000 Mark II, which was basically just a cosmetic difference with the added benefit of the controllers not being hardwired as they had been in the original SG-1000. Now, during the era of the Mark II, Sega released a number of peripherals, a keyboard, and, germane to this video, something called the card catcher. Cards were known in Japan as My Cards. Elsewhere, they're simply called Sega cards. Now, more games were released on card in Japan than anywhere else, and most were released during the Mark II era. There's 70-something games that were released in Japan. The US saw 13, and Europe less than that. Now, after the Mark II came the Mark III, and you might think, well, the Mark III was simply a redesign of the Mark II. But the Mark III actually had an improved processor and more RAM. Now, the processor was manufactured by Texas Instruments, and so was the sound chip. After the release of the Mark III, Sega saw how much money Nintendo was making in the US with its westernized version of the Famicom, the NES, so they decided to release the Mark III in other countries, renaming it the Master System, along with giving it a redesign. Now, as I alluded to earlier, the Master System is technically superior to the Famicom. And the Japanese version even more so, but I'll get to that in a minute. Now, if you don't insert a cartridge game or a card game, what boots up is a game that's built into the system. And which game that is depends on which variant model you have of the Model 1. Now, this, well, first of all, there was the 3010. The 3010 had, as its built-in game, Snail Maze. And that's all I had. Now, the 3010A variant was the most common. It had Hang On and Safari Hunt. Then there were two versions of the 3010B, the most common having Hang On and Astro Warrior. This is the much rarer variant, the 3010B. It doesn't have any other designation on it, but it only has Hang On as the built-in game. This is the rarer version than the more common. Now, games came in the cards, which were designed for budget games. They didn't have as much memory on them, but they didn't cost as much to manufacture, so they were sold for less. And there are cartridges. You'll notice that the cartridges are wider than they are tall and don't have much room for artwork. There are 50 pins in the westernized version. The Japanese version has 44 pins and is taller than it is wide. That gives it more room for artwork. But the main reason it's this size is to make the Master System, the Japanese Master System, backwards compatible with all of Sega's previous systems. SG-1000, the Mark II, the Mark III, the SC-3000, and a unusual variant, which is fully licensed, but I believe it was sold only in Taiwan, called the Othello Multivision. But the Japanese Master System will play those games too. Now, there are a number of differences. Both have a card slot, and they're the same size. They take the same size cards. However, the 3D goggles peripheral plugs into the Sega card slot on the Western version and has its own input on the Japanese version. Now, the Japanese version is considerably lighter than, well, the American version, because the American version has an RF output in addition to the AV outputs, and so it needs a lot of RF shielding. The Japanese Master System only has AV outs, so it doesn't need RF shielding, and therefore it is lighter. This is why the TurboGrafx 16 is larger and heavier than its parent system, the PC Engine. As the PC Engine didn't need all of that RF shielding. Now, there's an expansion port that was never used on any Master System. However, Sega did have plans for it. They had been developing an optical drive ever since an optical disk drive ever since the 70s, and they did in fact develop a floppy disk drive, but never released it. But they did have plans to use that, or else they wouldn't have put it there. Now, in addition to the Master System released in Japan playing a lot more games, it has a second chip. In addition to the Texas Instruments audio chip, it had one manufactured by Yamaha, and it's commonly referred to as the FM chip. Games that supported the FM chip would have this FM logo. Of the 4 games I have, 2 support it and 2 don't. So if it's a game that supports it, it'll automatically use the Yamaha chip, and if it doesn't, it'll just use the Texas Instruments chip. Now, one other thing I need to touch on before I show that. I want to get this in. The light gun, known as the light phaser. Very sturdy and well made. The American, or I should say the Western version of the Master System will play NTSC, PAL, and CCAM cartridges. It doesn't care. It has no lockout technology. In fact, the only lockout technology that exists with the Master System is between the Western version and the Japanese version, and that's only because of the difference in cart sizes. Something somebody may I think is really neat. This is a Mark III game, released only for the Mark III, but they put it on a reprogrammable Master System cartridge and did up artwork and everything, so that's really cool. This is a control pad for the Sega Master System. If you do not wish to wear out your Sega Master System control pad, a Genesis/Mega Drive control pad will work just fine. And I guess that'll be it. Hopefully I haven't run over. Until next time, stay awesome.